I'm Kathy Calvin, and it's great to be here with everybody. I am so proud to see people coming to the UN and working with us to build and strengthen a robust UN-US relationship. It is the most important thing that our foundation does, and it's the reason we felt that the merger alliance with the UNA 3 years ago was the most important thing we could do. I was a major supporter of our getting that done. I see some friends in the audience who helped us along the way, and Ed Elmendorf is back there, who was a major architect of this process. And I have to say, you know, sometimes when two organizations come together, and I was there when AOL and Time Warner merged, not a pretty thing. This is a merger that has made both pieces more successful and stronger. It helped the UN Foundation, which had a shorter history than UNA, but a special history in that we came into being to do two things: make sure that the US never went without paying its dues in full, on time, and without condition, as John Whitehead used to say, and to ensure that we brought many opportunities to the private sector, to individuals, to other organizations to work with the UN to solve some of the most pressing problems. And we, as you know, we do that through many campaigns that give people an opportunity to work together and to work with the UN. So those were our assets. The UN Association had phenomenal assets: members, chapters, a long history of speaking to other Americans, their members of Congress, their neighbors and friends, about why the UN is in US strategic interest. And so the marriage of those two sets of strengths and skills we thought would be pretty powerful, and in fact it has turned out to be extremely powerful. We've redoubled our efforts together to lobby on Capitol Hill, not only for the dues, but also for important issues like turning over the gag rule that was so unfair to women, making sure that immunizations, which are available in our country, are available all over the world, making sure that the work that the UN is doing is supported by our members of Congress. We're doing a great job together of making the global agenda a reality in Washington. And second, we've seen real progress in that we are seeing new chapters come on board. And I think Patrick probably discussed this morning, but to have Silicon Valley and Detroit and Miami as 3 new robust chapters is a great thing. I mean, we're in an era when people don't necessarily join chapters. They're busy online and doing lots of other things. I think the magic of UNA going forward is that it will marry those two time-honored traditions: people gathering in person and people working online. Together, it's pretty powerful. So I'm excited. I'm really glad you got to start your day with Jan Eliasson, our Deputy Secretary General. He's a wonderful advocate for Americans being strong, powerful partners of the UN. I assume he told you his story of being an American exchange student in the 50s and how he didn't, and how he met John Kennedy, and it changed his life, but he's always had a love affair with this country. So to have the #2 person at the UN with that kind of deep relationship with our country, I think is also really, really powerful. And of course, we have a strong Secretary General who has, I think, in his first term, and now certainly in his second term, shown us what a genuine leader can get done when he sets his mind to it. In his first term, he made climate change a major priority, and he's really stuck with it. He dedicated himself to increase the number of women at the UN and in leadership, and I'll come back to that in a second because it's really significant what he's done. And he made a personal crusade out of women's and children's health. He took a hard look at the Millennium Development Goals, which were created in the year 2000 under previous Secretary General Kofi Annan, and said, wait a minute, we have a really big problem. When we get to 2015, the 2 goals that are furthest behind are the most important: number 4 and number 5, which go to children's and women's mortality. And he put his own personal capital and currency behind addressing those 2 and inviting others to join him to make a difference. He created something called Every Woman, Every Child, which is a very significant umbrella alliance of donor countries, developing countries, businesses, organizations, and UN agencies, all committed to working together to make sure that we make progress every day between now and the year 2015 on saving women's and children's lives. And we are making progress. I mean, not too long ago, more than 12 million children died every year. That number is still unacceptable at 6 million, but it's been cut in half. So we are seeing progress. We're seeing girls and boys in primary school, and the gap between girls and boys has really reduced. We're seeing women, more than they used to, survive childbirth and having that first critical month after a baby's birth. Still too many are dying, but we're seeing great progress. So we know if we all put our minds to it, we can make a difference. And this Secretary General has been stellar in his leadership. I want to recognize Ginger and all the great work that you all have done in pulling this conference together. And I'm happy that I'm able, on my, as Mary Frances said, on my second day on the job, to be able to come and talk to you about women and girls, because, as I just said, I think this is an area where we're seeing enormous progress, but we all need to join together and work on it together. I know the UN Association last year created UNA Women. I think we've got about 100 members so far, and I think that's a new development also that I want to salute, because it is a new way for all of you who are members to really work together around a common theme and issue. So I'm hoping we can talk a little bit more about that and see what we can do to get that off the ground a little bit further. So let me say a little bit more about the Secretary General and women's rights, because it always does have to start right here in this body. But then I want to talk about what's happening around the world and what we can all be doing together to make sure that women and girls have the opportunity to live full and fully prosperous lives. So let me talk a little bit about what he's done so far. And I think you probably all know that in the year 2010, I believe, we created, for the first time, a UN agency solely dedicated to women called UN Women, and he brought in the former president of Chile, Michelle Bachelet, to run it. It's been a significant thing to have a woman of that leadership stature running it. She's already done a lot of work to bring the issues of women, not only inside the UN to the front of the agenda, but all over the world. And so that was terrific that he did it. Second, he has totally led by example. He's doubled the number of women serving in senior posts at the UN, including the UN's top spots for humanitarian affairs, human rights, and disarmament. And the UN's top doctor, the top lawyer, and police officer, all are women, as well as the Secretary General's chief of staff. So he puts his money where his mouth is. And I'll just say something about one other UN leader. I know you've had some different agencies here today. Babatunde Oshitemain, who came from Nigeria, was the Minister of Health there, is the fairly new head of the UN Population Fund. And I think this is just another significant appointment to mention, because it took a lot of courage to put the first man into the job at the head of the UN Population Fund. But this is a man who is so passionate about women's rights, about the importance of family planning and reproductive health, and also about the role of adolescents. And I thought that last panel, by the way, was just terrific. I mean, you're having a great series of meetings today, and I thought that one really hit it out of the park. So I did ask if I could talk about women and girls today, because it is my passion, and if we don't talk about that, it's kind of hard to get to any other issue in my book, because if you don't start with women, and particularly if you don't start with girls, we can't fix the problems of the world, and we can't achieve the MDGs by 2015. And let me just say about the MDGs for 1 second. They were started in the year 2000. It was a process that maybe was the only way it could have happened then. It wasn't transparent, it wasn't open, it didn't have a bunch of consultations, but they came up with 8 goals that at first, you know, people left New York after voting, and we had the whole world voting for those goals. You might have thought, okay, it's just another exercise in making a political statement. But those goals have really come to serve as the blueprints for every country to improve the lives of its citizens. So there's a common agenda, there's a common set of standards, there's a common set of goals and indicators that every single country can work with. And so Bill Gates himself, who was a major skeptic about the UN's role and the MDGs, has come to say this is the most important contribution that could have been made because it's given us all something to work toward together and to hold ourselves accountable for. So we will be reaching the year 2015 in just 2 years, and there's a lot of discussion now about what will happen after 2015, the so-called post-2015 development framework. It's really critical, and this time everyone will have a voice. Not everyone will have a say, but everyone will have a voice and have input. So there are tons of consultations going on around the world. We're participating in a number of them. We're organizing some, and it's a conversation I invite everyone to join, because we should all care about what that framework looks like. It will be our framework. And I especially want to say to the young people, it's your framework. So you really need to be thinking about it, because it's the world you'll be leading. And so you ought to be thinking about what it's going to take to make sure we have the tools we need. But until then, we cannot take our foot off the pedal. We've got 2 years to achieve as much progress on the current set of goals as possible. And I say this because I think there's a lot of people in this room who have been very dedicated to the MDGs, whether it's education or health or water or poverty or hunger. Whatever the issue is, we need to redouble our efforts, we need to work together, and we need to make sure that by the time we get to 2015, we can be proud of the work we've done, the achievements that have been made, so that we've set the next framework off on a good start, because this was a very positive experience and we give it a positive springboard. So a little advertisement there for something that I think will be coming down the road to you. April 6th is the kickoff for the final 1,000 days between now and 2015. And I just hope everyone around April 6th can be thinking about what you can do with us to work together to make sure that we are all achieving those first MDGs as successfully as we can. So I want to talk today about why the women's and girls' work has to be put at the top of the priority list. And it seems pretty obvious to me that if you invest in a girl, you've invested in her family, you've invested in her community, and it's the beginning of eradicating poverty. And I think in the last 10 years, this has become not just some people's point of view, but a very commonly held view. If you've read Half the Sky by Nick Kristof and Sheryl Wu Dunn, you know that they make the case very significantly that where we have been able to delay child marriage, where we've been able to keep girls in school, where we've been able to make sure a girl sees a doctor at age 12, not when she's pregnant for the first time, we have a chance of giving that girl the opportunity to increase her income by 20 to 30% simply by staying in school a year longer, to stay healthy, to be able to space and plan her family so that they can stay healthy and have a chance for longer and more successful lives. And we can make sure that she's a productive, contributing part of her community. These are all things we want for ourselves and for our own daughters. We should want it for the girls around the world. The good news is, and I just heard Nick Kristof say this, is that we're making a lot of progress, and we should be really aware of the progress that we've made. And as I said earlier, the education gap between boys and girls is closing. In Bangladesh, there are more girls in school than boys. Primary school is now almost a universal thing around the world. Secondary school, we still have some work to be done. We're seeing some real progress in maternal health, but we still have some work to be done. And we still have to break the taboo of family planning and human sexual rights. And I'll come back to that in a little bit because there's more to be said there. But we are making some progress. And we're seeing events around the world that are getting attention in a different way. When the schoolgirl Malala was shot down by the Taliban in Pakistan simply for saying that she wanted to go to school and that other girls should, she created a revolution around the world. She just has a new video out on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, it is so powerful. It's the first time she's spoken since the shooting and her surgery. And it's a reminder that a girl holding a backpack is maybe the scariest thing in the world to the Taliban and to tyrants. She had something that everybody wants, and she is getting the attention of the world. So when we look at an incident like that, or we look at the incident in India where the young woman was so brutally raped and murdered, and we see the Indian Spring uprising, no different than what happened in the Arab countries, where people went to the streets to protest something that was seriously wrong in their society. We're seeing that change is taking place and that people want to partner all over the world together. We recognize that actually in our own country, and that girls in this country are ready to be vocal advocates for girls around the world. In our own work at the UN Foundation, as we did work for girls, we started thinking, who else should we tap for this important work? Who else could be a strong ally? And of course, who else but another adolescent girl would be the strongest advocate for making sure girls all over the world have access to healthcare and education, opportunities to grow, and work opportunities, but girls here. So we created a campaign called Girl Up. And the idea was very simple. Any girl can be an advocate. Any girl can give money. Any girl can share with her friends what she's learned about the plight of girls around the world. And any girl can start a Girl Up Club and make sure that the issue of girls is on the agenda. These girls are powerful advocates because they really believe it's unfair that a girl somewhere else in the world doesn't have the same rights that they do. So we've seen some pretty exciting things happen, and the three things that the Girl Up campaign is trying to make sure are part of the agenda are that girls are counted. And what we find out is that when you just look at funding for girls and women, girls get about 2% of that. So we need to disaggregate the data when we talk about women and girls and find out exactly what is getting to the girls and make sure that they get their fair share. When we look at adolescent funding, some of the same things happen. We find out if you really can unpack it, the majority is going to boys and not girls. Again, we need to count girls and make sure that they are getting their fair share. And we need to invest in girls. And we know that this is a popular thing now to talk about, and we need to invite more people to join us. Programs that are specifically focused on adolescent girls can make a real difference. So we've been working with the UN in 4 countries to demonstrate projects that can really show what it would look like if you can find efforts to help a girl. So one in Malawi is all about making sure that girls have the education and support they need to stay in school and not be married until they're ready and it's on their decision. This issue of child marriage has now been taken up by the Elders, the organization founded by Nelson Mandela. And when you have those elders with their wisdom saying, let girls be girls, not brides, it's very powerful, and I think they're getting attention around the world. Another program we experimented with the Nike Foundation and UNFPA was to provide a goat to any family who let their daughter stay in school for 2 more years. It put an economic value on the girl as an educated member of the family. The fathers, who were often the most reluctant to keep their girls in school, suddenly had a new attitude, and then they became the village elders who were arguing that the whole system should change. So not everybody loves cash transfers or cash incentives, but I think they work because you got to get people's attention, and many girls were being asked to stay home simply because somebody had to do the work of going to get wood or fire, or wood for fire or water. And if we can change the economic value of a girl, we can change her standing in her family and her community. So there's a lot of really interesting work that's being done, and we need to make sure it continues. But the thing that most people are not talking about the situation for adolescent girls, is the #1 killer of girls. And it's that they die in childbirth unnecessarily. And you know, when 30% of the maternal deaths are girls between 15 and 19, and when the leading cause of death for girls between 15 and 19 is pregnancy and complications of childbirth, and when girls between 10 and 15 are 70% of the hospitalizations from childbirth because of problems with abortion, we know that there's a problem that's not being talked about and not being dealt with. More than half the girls, unmarried girls in India, say that they've never had counseling. They don't know anything about condoms or birth methods. They don't know anything about contraception, and they've never been talked to about their rights. This is a very important issue, and it's sometimes really hard to talk about because people don't want to talk about girls and sex. But in fact, girls need the opportunity to make their own decisions. They need the opportunity to discuss these issues, and they need the opportunity to have access to the reproductive services and commodities that are widely approved of in this country. You know, more than 90% of Americans approve of contraception. We should treat it the same way around the world. So there are roughly 220 million around the world who do not have access to contraceptive services or modern family planning, education and services. 20 years ago, the world decided universal access to modern contraception and modern family planning services was appropriate and a goal by 2015. We aren't going to make it by 2015, but we should all be working toward that. It's cost effective, it's life-saving, it would support the Millennium Development Goals, and it would reduce maternal mortality by 30% and infant mortality by 10 to 20%. It just is time for us to talk about this issue together. And you know, it's really great because one of the most important women in the world has made this her cause, and that's Melinda Gates. She's a Catholic, but she looked deeply into the faces of women as she's traveled around the world as the leader of the Gates Foundation, and said the one thing every woman said to her that they want is to be able to space and plan their own families, that they know that that's at the heart of their ability to move forward. And she came back and spent a lot of time trying to understand what were the hurdles, what were the obstacles, and she's committed her life now to this issue. She's got a website called nocontroversies.org because she believes there shouldn't be any controversy over such a simple thing as a woman being able to make those decisions for herself. The Gates Foundation and the UK government also last year held a summit to put this on the global agenda. And they raised $4.6 billion and got countries all over the world to sign up to making this a priority for the coming year. So there's a lot of things that are happening in this space. There's a lot of room for us as leaders and as US citizens to take this on. The US government gives roughly 25% of all family planning support around the world. When we raise our contribution to family planning support, so do the other big donors in Europe and in the Scandinavian countries and Japan and elsewhere. For the last 5 years, the UN Foundation and a number of other foundations have been working hard to increase the level and leadership of the US government support for family planning. So 3 years ago, it was at about 550 million. Today, it's up at about 750 million. We need to get it to $1 billion. We invite you to join us on this campaign. It's a really important one for all UNA members to be part of the campaign to make sure that the U.S. continues to show its leadership in this area. There have also been several opportunities over the last year to make some other changes in funding and support for UNFPA. We need to be resolute on that. So let me just come back to you as UNA members and what you can do, and then I want to open it up for questions. You know, it's so important that you have a voice in your communities, whether it's on this issue, on clean energy, on ensuring that we achieve full universal human rights. And I am so proud that many of you have taken the time to come here today and have taken the time to organize in your own communities. It's a really exciting time, I think, for movements like this because we're seeing all kinds of new tools that will make it easier for us to do it. So I would say there's a couple things you need to always keep in mind. You've got to be a strong advocate. You've got to take advantage of all the new tools available to you. You've got to use your voice to lift the stigma applied to family planning. You need to be part of the global conversation on the post-2015 framework. And you need to keep coming here to the UN and talking about what the UN can do. We are so lucky to be in a country where the UN is based, where the UN was created, and where the UN has an opportunity to gain really strong support. So let me thank all of you and the division for bringing us together today, and I'd be happy to take some questions with the little bit of time we have left. Thank you very much.